who I am, well, my name is Dave Arvedon, but Dave, you see, is just a nickname. My real name happens to be David, but they call me Dave because people are too tired to say two syllables. They want to shorten it to one. So if Dave works for the lazy generation, fine. They'll save 3/4 of a second and they won't have to say the second syllable id. So this was actually 64 years ago that I wrote my first song, and it was called Get Along Cowboy. I went like this: get along cowboy, milkman, milkman, milkman. Get along milkman, cowboy, cowboy, cowboy. I hope I've improved after that. Am I in a cult? Well, there's the Ark cult, but I'm not really into that. But they say I have a cult following, and that's a very euphemistic way of saying that there are a tiny, tiny amount of people who think that my music is extraordinary, and unfortunately, the vast majority of people think my music is crap. So that's just a very euphemistic way of saying it, but I intend to rectify that situation shortly by putting out music which is so insane that it's going to hit the world over the head with a 10,000-ton flea. Let me explain to you the exact meaning of the aardvark. Now, when I was a very small child, the first time I picked up a dictionary, I saw the beginning part of the dictionary, and I saw stuff that wasn't very interesting, like a. The first thing I saw that really got my attention was aardvark. And it was an animal that I had never heard about. And I said, wow, this is special. An animal with the first two letters of the animal being both A. I say, wow. And my last name is Arvedon, which sounds like aardvark. So when I was at Brandeis University and we were playing a game of football with a frisbee instead of a football, I went out and I caught the frisbee for a touchdown, and Doug Salerno said, "Oh no, aardvark, what's the idea? You beat me." So after that they called me the aardvark. A little bit about my college experience for everybody out there. I went to Brandeis University, graduated the class of '69 with a BA in psychology. I was on the basketball team the first year, but I was the last man on the bench, so second year I decided not to do it. So college was kind of a fun experience for me. I got a chance to be a little bit wild and crazy, but I guess that must have been my start with insanity in college. In college, we recorded Buckets of Water. Well, we never really recorded that. We practiced it. But then we did a single it was self-released, called Till the Stroke of Dawn and See the Girl, with the original Psychopaths. And that came out in college, and it ended up in a lot of the college jukeboxes, actually. So I was kind of well-renowned back in those days as the brain behind Till the Stroke of Dawn. That was actually the first song we recorded. It's about Count Dracula, and in the song I'm pretending to actually be Count Dracula and to be rather menacing. I figured that would be a good idea to write a song about Count Dracula. As far as my karaoke background, I don't care to elaborate, but I will anyway. What I have been in the habit of doing is going to different karaoke bars and pretty much making a fool of myself But then again, it was fun. I would get out there with some of my buddies and do some karaoke numbers. I used to go to this place, Whalers in Saugus, before they shut it down. And we had some rather memorable experiences there. I had a tape with some of my original material on it that I sang at the karaoke, so it was like a cheap way of playing live without having to lug amps and equipment. And one day Penn and Teller accompanied us to the karaoke bar in Saugus, and we had a pretty wild time there. That was kind of fun. I don't think Penn or Teller did karaoke, but I did. I did a few of my infamous songs like Hoi Hoi Toi Toi and some of the other crazy songs that I have. And everybody was really into it. So this one guy walks up to Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller and says to him, "Hey, you look kind of familiar." He says, "I think I know you, but I can't seem to recall your name. Could you tell me what your name is?" And he said, "John Johnson." I thought that was a good answer. That stayed with me. I always will appreciate that answer. It was very memorable. I always do when I went to karaoke. When I go to karaoke, I would always perform, but I haven't been there in a while. Although I was actually on a karaoke in a cruise that my brother dragged me on to the Bahamas. I hate cruises. The only difference between a cruise and being in jail is when you're in jail you can't drown. So anyway, I get up, I do this karaoke in front of a bunch of drunks on this cruise, and I strained my vocal cords. I think I did some Doors songs, because I always liked the Doors, but that was kind of, you can take it or leave it. I haven't been back to karaoke since. All right, how I decided in terms of not being influenced by drugs and alcohol is when I was a very small child, I figured something out that a lot of people seem to have difficulty with, and that's that there are certain specialists that know certain things better than other people know them. So in other words, when you have a problem with your car, you don't go to the doctor to ask about your car. You go to the auto mechanic. When you have a problem with your teeth, you go to the dentist. When you're looking for the next party, you go to your brothers, to your buddies. When you want to find out what's for dinner, you ask your mom. And when you want to find out what the effects of drugs and alcohol are, you don't go to your buddies. You don't go to your auto mechanic. You don't go to your mother. You go to the doctor. That's what doctors do. So you figure out, now the doctor is the guy that can let you know what the facts are in terms of what happens to people that take drugs and alcohol. And after talking to my doctor, when I was maybe 12 years old, I decided, well, my doctor, he has it nailed. He has the answers. I might as well do what he tells me, because he knows what he's talking about. So I did. And I never took drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or did any of that stuff ever. You see, Watertown Square was next to Newton. It was a place where the Charles River ran through. I decided to write a couple of songs about Watertown Square. Why I decided to do that is anybody's guess, but probably the main reason is because it was there. So I figured, why not write a song about a place that's there? So I wrote a couple of songs about Watertown Square. One of them was entitled Watertown Square, and the other one was entitled Don't Break the China, about a fake restaurant which was allegedly in Watertown Square. My creative process in terms of how I come up with songs. Well, I don't play any instruments or read music. When I was in the 4th grade, my aunt and my parents wanted me to learn the clarinet, but I didn't go for it, so I left my clarinet on the bus heading to Framingham. As far as how the songs are written, they hit me like a total gestalt. You like that word, gestalt? It's an anglified version of a European word, I believe. Anyway, the music kind of sort of gets to me first, and then the lyrics kind of fill right in, and it's a whole process where it just hits me, and then I kind of square it away and straighten everything out. Well, the toughest year of my life was 1990, because what had happened is after I graduated Boston University with a master's degree in education and rehabilitation counseling, and I couldn't get a decent paying job. I went into the family business and eventually took over that business myself. And the business I was involved with was wholesale electronics and electrical supplies. I imported radios, sold televisions wholesale, sold a lot of electrical supplies to hardware stores, and it was a thriving business up until perhaps 1985. And around that period of time is when things started going south on me. The big chain stores came in like Walmart, Kmart, and Caldor, and all of these huge computerized conglomerates were selling merchandise retail for below what it would cost me to import the same material. So all of my customers were going out of business. All the mom and pop stores were going out of business, left and right, one after the other, and I owned the big commercial building in Brockton with a lot of independent businesses in there who also started going out of business. So I was faced with a huge mortgage and no money and losing my business and no business, and eventually I lost everything. My building, my properties, my house, my marriage, my family, the whole thing. So 1990 was the darkest year of my life, and I ended up just in a tailspin. And since then, it's just been trying to get myself back out of there, and I ended up working for a large company in the newspaper delivery business, and the 1990 is now past history. I'm glad it's over. It was the worst year of my life. Around the period of 1990, I didn't have an escape. I would kind of lie awake in bed, my head would be spinning, I'd be hearing voices about people who were looking for the money I owed them. I'd be walking around in circles. I'd try to figure out different plans on how to get out of my predicament. I couldn't because there was no way to get out. I would come upon an idea, well, maybe if I do this, I'll be able to get out of this mess. But then a minute later I would say, no, that's not going to work. So I didn't have an escape. That's probably what the problem was. In terms of what I'm doing now with my music, is I have a wealth of material. A lot of material was recorded ages and ages ago, A lot of material was recorded recently. A lot of material wasn't recorded at all. A lot of songs were written in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and recently. So I have a wealth of material, so my game plan going forward will be basically to release as much material as I possibly can, with the direction being, of course, ultimately to hopefully get something happening with the material. And recently I've had the good fortune of being able to connect with some musicians that are head and shoulders above the musicians that I've worked with in the past. So going forward, I expect to have a lot of very, very good musicians and good material and good recording. All right, my dress style, let me consult with my associate there.
You want to see?
Come here, Kitty.
Think you can hold them?
Yeah, I want to get to this cat.
I don't know if they'll let that happen.
Kitty. The kitty cat is afraid of me. That's what my dress style is.
Yeah, something tells you that cat's not coming back.
Yeah, that cat's not coming back. It's the story of my life, you know. The cat's not coming back. I always figure that I want to wear something that I like, that kind of rings my bell. Something where I can say, this is interesting, so that I don't bore myself to death, basically. So I've decided to accumulate whatever I can in the line of bizarre fashions, because that's one of my, I guess you could say, passions, is to be as bizarre as I possibly can, because bizarre is good. Well, I go to a store, and I'm going to give them a shameless plug here. This store is called Porta Classica. They have a few different locations in the Boston area. The one I go to is on Blue Hill Ave in Grove Hall in Mattapan, and they have access to very unique fashions, and they also have the ability to custom make clothes, and they also have the ability to order stuff out of the catalogs from everywhere all over the world. So this is pretty much my clothing planet. All right, everybody wants to know what the difference is between the real McCoy and a fake McCoy. And I'm going to let everybody know right now so that there's no innuendo or confusion regarding this particular subject. Okay, a real McCoy is a McCoy that's real. A fake McCoy is when you're roller skating in an empty swimming pool and you have a hippopotamus on top of your head. So that's the difference between the real McCoy and a fake McCoy. The real McCoy is leather boots. The fake McCoy is boots that are covered by painted paper. Peaches! All right, I'm going to talk about peaches. Nobody ever wrote a song about rotten fruit, so I said, this has to happen. This has to get done. So I wrote a song called Living in a Cavity about a wormy peach. I wrote a song called Rotten Peaches. I wanted to develop the idea of rotten peaches so that it would apply to members of my cult. so that I could brainwash people into focusing on rotten peaches, so I could make rotten peaches a part of everybody's life, so that people would actually give a lot of attention to rotten peaches. I wanted to bring that to the forefront of culture because I figured if I didn't do this, nobody else would. I wrote a song called Telephone Booth. Now, I noticed that there are certain people that it just seems they're very, very famous people, but they never named anything after them. Like they never named anything after Charles Manson. They never named anything after Hitler. They never named anything after John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was a very, very negative character. So if you were to name anything after John Wilkes Booth, it would have to be something that Don Imus peed in. And that would be none other than a telephone booth. Let's get back to the subject matter at hand here, because we should not be focusing on negativity. And even though I was very rudely interrupted here by the film crew, I will try to get over that and not allow it to affect me psychologically for the rest of my life. So we will resume the subject matter at hand, which was my discussion of telephone booths. Now, it seems that whenever I went into a telephone booth, I would have a negative experience. Either the phone would cut out on me, I would run out of coins and I wouldn't have enough money on me, or somebody else would be using the telephone booth and I would have to wait for the person while he got into a fight with his ex-wife on the line for an hour, and all I wanted to do was call up somebody and say, okay, I'm here, I'll meet you there. So the telephone booth had a very, very negative set of connotations for me. So one time at Brandeis University, I had just got the news that I had flunked my organic chemistry test, and I was going to tell my parents that I was no longer in the pre-med program at Brandeis University. So I called from a telephone booth and the line was busy. So my plan of action was I took the receiver and smashed it against the concrete wall until the receiver was in about 1,000 pieces. I ripped it off the metal coil and smashed it into the wall until there was a big hole in the wall. So that was my plan. So I had my revenge on the telephone booth. But I don't mean to digress. Getting back to the subject of why John Wilkes Booth is in this mix is because John Wilkes Booth actually also had negative connotations attached to him. So I figured, well, who would a telephone booth be named after if it wasn't named after John Wilkes Booth? So that was the premise of my song, Telephone Booth. Right now I have two cars. I have an electric green Mercury Grand Marquis, and I have a pink and gray Lincoln MKZ. And the reason I have two cars is because if I get tired of driving one car, I start driving the other car. Also, when I'm in a parking lot and I'm looking for the car and I forget where I left it, well, I figure there isn't going to be another electric green Mercury Marquis in the lot, and there won't be another pink and gray Lincoln in there either. So there's no way I'll ever lose my car, and if anybody ever steals it, I'll say, officer, I don't know my license plate number, But all you got to do is look for the electric green Mercury Marquis. You can't miss it. There's only one of them.
For you.
Here comes the cat, the star of the show.
Think you'll let her pick you up? Pick her up?
I don't think the cat will let me pick me up, but this cat is going to be a star. You mark my words.
I think he's so confused by all these people. I don't think he has any idea what's going on.
This cat is going to be seen by millions. This cat is God. I recorded telephone booth on a cassette. It was kind of a crap recording. It's nothing like the latest version that's going to be on my next double CD set, which is miles above that. But it was a cheap version of telephone booth, and it was picked up by Dr. Demento, and Dr. Demento played it on the radio a few times. And did I mention that Don Imus, the radio talk show host, once made a point of mentioning the fact that he had once peed in a telephone booth? Or did I neglect to mention that earlier? If I neglected to mention that, I deeply apologize for that oversight. Okay, the Teeth was the name of the band that I was briefly with. We used to practice in this big farmhouse in Hanover with a dog named Max. And Robert Holmes was in the band. He was somewhat famous. And we put out, at that time, I believe it was a cassette. And we were almost produced by Sire Records. And one of the songs we did was called Deface Baghdad. And how that song was written was, in the keys were, of the verse were D, E, F, A, C, E, and the keys in the chorus were B, A, G, D, A, D. So a lot of people probably didn't pick up on that, but I figured that would be my joke on the world, to see how long it would take people to figure out that those were the keys of the song. Well, there were several that I just kind of hung in there with. I should really put to rest all of these rumors that are circling around me in terms of auditioning for the Modern Lovers. And really get this story straight so that everybody can know what the real facts are behind this, because it's been spun in many different ways. Back in the early 70s, I was looking for a band to do my material, so I was calling around and talking to people, and one of the people I talked to was Jerry Harrison, who I guess eventually formed Talking Heads, but at the time he was with Jonathan Richmond and the Modern Lovers. So we had a good conversation, and how we arranged to meet was I was going to go out there with my reel-to-reel recorder to their apartment on Mass Ave, Cambridge, where they practiced. I was going to meet the band members, and we were going to explore the possibility of their joining in with me and producing my material and putting it all out. So I played the material for him, and Jerry Harrison loved the material, and you know, we were doing real well, getting to know each other, and they were grooving on the material, and then all of a sudden Jonathan Richmond walked in. Now, I had no idea who he was, And as it turns out, Jerry Harrison never explained to Jonathan Richman that I was going to be called in there to talk to about putting some of my material together. So this came as a complete shock to Jonathan Richman, and since it was his band, he didn't want anybody taking the limelight away from him. So basically what he did is when he found out who he was, he just told me, he said, "Get out of here." So anyway, I found out who he was, I took my recorder, I left, that was that, end of story. So that was pretty simple. I never auditioned for him, I didn't scare anybody, it was just, he didn't want to have anything to do with me because I was competition for him, and I can't really blame him on that. So it's just something that kind of spun out of control. And then I heard that Jerry Harrison still likes my material, so anyway, that was interesting. In terms of a few of my other bands, I've been with all kinds of schmoes and schmageggies over the course of time, all kinds of people. Rich Mirsky has been in several bands. He's been playing a lot of guitars for me. I've had various and sundry other bands. David Keith and the Teeth was the name of the band that we used when I was with Robert Holmes and that crew in Hanover, and that was kind of short-lived. And then after that, it was just a question of getting together with people and recording, and that's been it, recording. I kind of outgrew the use for playing live. Probably the thing that soured me was the last performance we gave at Club 3, which in and of itself is a story and a half. You see, we, back in the old days, I'm saying 1994 to put a year on it, maybe 95. So here's what happened. I was playing with these guys. The bass player was a guy by the name of Sam. Oh, what was his name? I forget. Anyway, Sam's claim to fame was when we put out the bio for the band, he said he was learning how to play the bass guitar. Now, the drummer was a guy by the name of Jimmy Perrant, who was kind of like sort of a friend of mine, kind of, sort of. I ended up moving into his old house when he moved out. We had a keyboard player by the name of Ivan. We had a lead guitar player by the name of Steve Revelak. I don't know whatever happened to Steve, but Aram remembers him. Aram Heller put out a single at his studio at the time, which was Mr. Harrison Aggimated. So Steve Revelak was the lead guitar player. Then we had, I mentioned Ivan, the keyboard player, and I think that was it. So as far as Club 3 goes, we were playing a show at Club 3. We were the headliners, so had to get everybody together. I had to drive out to Linfield and load equipment into my car. I had to drive somewhere else to pick somebody else up. Finally, we get to this joint, Club 3 in Union Square, Somerville. What a dive. I don't think they're still in business. So we're sitting around waiting. We were supposed to go on at 10 o'clock. So 9 o'clock comes along, and this other band from Harvard was supposed to go on before us. Now, the other band told the club management that they were going to be bringing 400 people from Harvard University to see him. Only there were only like 5 or 6 people there. So the club management was pretty pissed off at him, and they said, well, you guys aren't going to play. They said, you lied to us. You told us you were going to have 400 people here, and there were 5 people, so you guys just got lost. And they had come in with a van, big truck with all kinds of equipment on it parked out front. I actually felt really bad for those guys, so I said to the club management, I said, look, these guys came in, I don't know, I think they might have actually come in from North Carolina. So I say, look, these guys drove in all the way from North Carolina. They were expecting to play, and I think you ought to let them play, because not letting them play is really uncalled for. It's really in poor taste. So the guy says to me, well, you don't tell me how to run my club. He says, you guys are next. You were supposed to go on at 10, but you guys are going to go on right now. So I said to him, well, hey, wait a minute, the keyboard player isn't even here yet. How can we go on without our keyboard player? He says, I don't care. You guys go on right now, or I'm going to throw you out of the club too. So I said, Jimmy, guys, let's get the hell out of here. This sucks. So Jimmy says, no, we're here. We got to play. We came all the way here. We got to play. There are people here. Let's play. So finally he convinced me to play. So we're going up there, playing, doing some material. And after the first song, I said, hey, wait a minute. I can't hear myself in the monitors. I say, can't hear myself at all here. I say, you gotta raise up my vocals so I can at least hear myself sing. So the A&R man there said, okay, we'll raise up your vocals. We were hearing you fine, but if you want, we'll raise up your vocals anyway. So he raised up his vocals, and I'm singing the next song. I'm going along, singing, straining my voice because I couldn't hear myself. So after the next song, I went back to the A&R guy. I said, hey, look, I can't hear myself. I say, I'm not going to sing up here if I can't hear myself. I say, you got to do something about the levels in here, because this is just horrendous. This is a joke. So he says, well, I'll do the best I can, but I can hear you fine. So the drummer, Jimmy, he says, take it easy, Dave. Everybody can hear you. You sound great. Let's just keep going. You sound great. So the next song, I forget what the song was, but when the song started coming on, I start going like that, lip syncing. So at the end of the song I say, Jimmy, how did I sound? He says, you sounded great. And then they started in with the next song. So and I started lip syncing again. They didn't catch on. So in the middle of the song, I say, well, that's it, guys. I'll see everybody later. I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Have a nice night. I just walked, left. That was the end of that band. That was it for my playing out live also. If I could speak out to all of the people that are my followers, that are members of my cult, well, I'll tell you one thing I would not say. I would not say, Mother, 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 everybody join in the circle. Here's some Kool-Aid. No, I wouldn't say that. It's a long, long way from Jonestown to Jamestown. Now, what I would basically say is, Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate the accolades. I appreciate the attention. I appreciate the votes of confidence. I am in your debt. How about the fact that there is a giant electromagnet inside of my head, and that I'm really a deformed squirrel who looks like a human being? Will that count? All right, so now everybody knows everything there is to know about Dave Arvedon and the psychopaths. And one other thing, we're really not psychopaths. I just think the name sounds cool.
Somebody else, somebody